to me, it always goes back to, if you're going to put labels or rules on people, one way that will get them around to believing or understanding it is if you have a really good explanation of why.
I want to go back to roles and talk about developing roles today because it's something that we talk about a lot. And same thing, I'm still like trying to catch up on all these DMs and messages I'm getting, and it seems to be a theme of people being unsure. Like they understand the concept of what a role is, but then when it comes to specific skills and specific skill sets, it's like if we throw out a word like a power forward, a stay-at-home defenseman, whatever, what skills make those roles? Like what makes you one of those things? And it seems like, again, sitting here just putting the episode together, I was like, seems obvious to me. Like it's not that hard to figure out. But that's again us being right in the world all the time. So I think it's a helpful thing maybe, or hopefully it's a helpful thing where we can kind of walk through from the ground up, kind of again, like just the idea of roles and when that starts to happen in hockey, why it's important, and then we can kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of like actual skills, because then like my favorite thing to do when we do the podcast is giving people like an actionable thing, because when we talk like all vague, it's like hard to know like how do I apply this thing to my situation. So I like giving like concrete stuff. So maybe we'll finish off like talking about the actual skills and how to turn it into this role type of thing. So I don't know if you want to start just talking about in general, like general thoughts about uh, roles when they're appropriate, how to develop into it, like that kind of stuff. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think why roles are important. Like, first of all, um, I think sometimes roles can be um, perceived as a negative or an extreme positive. For example, if and this is what, this is what people, I think players should try to, and parents actually, especially when kids are young. For Let me go first of all, roles are not, we're not talking about 7 year olds. We're talking about at a certain age, at a certain level, roles become important when it comes become when you decide that you want to start winning games and be a competitive hockey team, and you're pursuing hockey, right? So, but so the next thing would be that roles can be perceived as negative or extremely positive. So I think a lot of the times how a parent reacts to maybe how their child has been given a role that could be negative. Like if you say to someone like you're a shutdown centerman and the kids score goals, like let's say you're a junior guy or Bantam, whatever, and all of a sudden you're going to be more of a defensive player. People could say, "Well, I can score goals," though. And it's like a negative, and it's like I'm hoping that kids and parents can see the value of not being negative about it and seeing the value of it, and then that's that, because there's a lot of good things about roles. And then the next thing about that is, like, just because you're in a role, because sometimes coaches make mistakes, or they see one thing and and they see one thing and they put you in a role where it's not really your thing, but maybe it'll get fixed, maybe it won't, but still I would still say embrace it, because you're just learning about hockey, right? But even having said that, because you're a goal scorer doesn't, let's say, right, you say you're an offensive player, goal scorer, that doesn't limit you from only scoring goals. And I think putting labels on people, and that's what you try not to do when you do roles. When you put labels on people, that's where it could get maybe someone could have hurt feelings, right? So I would make sure that you, and being a shutdown guy doesn't mean that you can never score a goal or you're not important to the team, right? It's that's what I have to say before I start.
Yeah, okay, a couple things about that. First would be, if you can you pin it? This could be a one-word answer. Can you pin it to like an age of where it starts to be relevant? Like at
Almost an age.
what point should you start paying attention to like what am I best designed for as a player kind of thing?
Yeah. So obviously not when you start,
Mm-hmm.
because people have to play hockey.
Right.
Like,
You need
it,
time to figure out what you're good at kind of thing, right?
yeah, yeah, and then I would even say there's a certain level, and it's arbitrary. Like there's no definitive answer to that. Good word. Huh? So first of all, you as coaches and parents, as players, you just want to play and you want to figure out what you are, right? And there's no point in teaching. There's always a point in getting the message out of working hard and moving the puck. Like those little things are things that those are non-negotiables basically. But to have roles, even a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, that maybe not yet, right? Because let's just go play hockey, because a lot of times things sort itself out. So if you're playing house league hockey and you're 15, does it matter if you're a shutdown forward or not? Like, I don't think so. But if you're playing on a triple A team or a double A team, like you're at a level where there's body checking, and you're trying to win championships and stuff like that, then winning becomes maybe a little bit more important. Then that kind of sorts itself out. So I would say, if I'm doing just a general statement, probably around the U14. I'm being very general. That could change because you could have the best team in the world with guys that get it early, and you want to win in the U11 thing, and you can do it and it works. That's fine. But I think generally you want your kids to play hockey. The aggressive players will be aggressive. Kids that are more defensive will kind of be more on the defensive side. And I think it's just important to let them play and teach them the non-negotiables of hockey.
Yeah, because you need some time to figure everything out, right? So I think the one thing, it's funny too, because like some people that hear this, it's I'm not trying to like pick on parents and stuff like that, but I've said this before, I find the younger the player, the more seriously parents talk about this kind of stuff, which is really strange to me. Like, I feel like the older they get, the more serious they should take it. But it seems like when kids are younger, maybe it's because parents don't see like the vastness of the hockey world and like how many good players are out there. So you see like your kid has a little bit of ability, they get excited, they want to start jumping on some of these things like, okay, how can I now best develop my kid's role when he's 10, or get him in an off ice program, or this and that and that. Like that, I see it more younger, which is weird, but it still happens older too, but it's more apparent to me when kids are younger that they get crazy about stuff like this. The reason I'm saying that is there's a way to start to introduce these concepts without it being like, you need to know your role, kid, when you're 11. So one quick example is funny because I had the one class in here today. We're doing like intro weightlifting stuff, and you know how much they care about weightlifting? They don't at all. They're grade sevens, so I need to teach it to them though, and I want them to learn it. But every 5 minutes today, I had kids saying, "Can I go on the assault bike?"
Yeah, just to
piss around, right? So
Yeah.
it's like they can only take so much.
Yeah.
Is my point of that
Yeah.
at that age when they're young. So in those kids, I don't even know what grade 7 is, maybe 12, 11, something like that. So
Yeah, 10,
it's
11,
around there,
11, 12.
right? Yeah. So that's the age where it's like they can only take so much, man. So that's my one thing about the rules. And then the other thing is what the idea, you kind of touched on it a bit, of like putting boundaries on people or putting labels where now you're sticking a kid to a role, and that's the other danger that you can kind of fall into, especially the younger they are. So if you're a coach listening to this, you're like, okay, I need to establish roles on my team. It's like, yes, but like everyone still needs to play and experience everything to develop, right? So that's kind of why I like that U14-ish kind of area, because I feel like you've been playing, if you're playing at a high level, if you're pursuing hockey, like with all those caveats again, I feel like you've been playing long enough to kind of see where you lie on this like skill spectrum that we're going to run through, and then maybe which direction you're going to be more going towards, which can still change. It's not like you're still stuck.
I think like even saying all that, like I know I might be going backwards here. Even saying all that, like the term role for U14 might even be early. And here's what I mean by that. Okay, so and maybe even U16 might be a little bit early, but not. But hang in there, okay? Because in youth hockey, you typically have 3 lines and 3 sets of D, right? And 1 goalie or 2 goalies. So you don't necessarily, you can if you're building, like if you're the triple A wanting to get drafted, double A that you're really competitive and you're trying to win games. And I know that might sound like a weird statement. You're trying to win games. There's competitive hockey that's expected, and then there's more of a fun hockey where it's not as expected. It's about keeping kids playing hockey, right, and enjoying it. So if you take because I've had this with my Bantam team when I was in Detroit. It was like everybody was so good, everybody thought they were a first line guy. So roles could also be not necessarily you're a checker, you're a this, you're a that. It's just like what you could do is you take roles and you can complement line mates or complement a team. So it doesn't have to be said your role is right, but it can be.
Right.
Yeah, I know that's
But
ambiguous.
no, but I think it's the point is like you're starting to introduce the idea of like some players are better at certain things than others, right? And you don't necessarily have to call that a role, but it's like if you got the kid that's really fast, it's like everyone can see that. If you got the kid that can really shoot, like everyone can see that. If you got the guy that's just bigger and he can out muscle guys and whatever, all the parents, all the players, everybody can see obvious strengths that players have, and they can also see like obvious weaknesses that players have. And so, as a coach or as a parent, and then understanding it as a player, I feel like it's important that around that time, whether you call it a role or not, or you stick someone to a role or you don't, it's just important that there starts to be an understanding that these things exist. Like, you need to understand that moving forward, this is where it's going. Like, there's a reason why the guy that's the third, like, I'm trying to think of a good fourth line example in the NHL that people would know, like a Cal Clutterbuck or like a Matt Martin. They're on that checking line. Like, there's a reason they're always on the fourth line because that is a staple role in the NHL. So it's just like teaching or starting to introduce that idea of like, this is where it goes. Like, you guys can see where this goes, right? So whether or not you're sticking it to them or saying role or whatever, I think it's just making kids understand like later on this is what's going to be coming, if that kind
Yeah.
of makes sense.
Yeah, and the only other reason I would say like it's still a little bit early still, like when they're in youth hockey, because and I don't mean this in any disrespectful or rude way, but like some kids are still so immature, and even the environment, like the parents telling them or grandparents saying, Did you score? Did you score?" A lot of people put importance on scoring. So I've seen this in youth hockey where the kid's just trying so hard to score that he forgets about everything else, and he might not score still, right? And he just gets frustrated. So it's like it's important. Now, having said all that stuff, it goes to me. It always goes back to if you're going to put labels or rules on people. One way that will get them around to believing or understanding it is if you have a really good explanation of why you see this, or and why if you do this job it's going to help the team, and why if you do this job it's going to help you as a player. So if you can do a really good job at that without minimizing and making, actually I don't mean it to say it like that either, is to make every role very very important because it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so